The story kicks off the day before the high school cultural festival. ᴄᴏᴘ, a first-year student from Class 4, is feeling tense as he struggles under the weight of a heavy package. To him, the cultural festival is just an event for social butterflies to enjoy, and he only participates to avoid upsetting his classmates. He's the type who prefers staying on the sidelines, watching others do the work. Standing by the classroom door, he plans to drop off the package and head home quickly. But before he can move, a girl suddenly crashes into him, sending both of them tumbling to the floor. The girl turns out to be ᴄᴏᴘᴘыឫ, someone ᴄᴏᴘ finds hard to deal with. ᴄᴏᴘ quickly stands up, bows, and apologizes, getting so close to his face that he freezes in shock. She casually mentions that they're in the same class, though she's never noticed him before. ᴄᴏᴘ stares at her, taken aback by her bluntness. She lets out a small laugh, and he mutters that she probably never noticed him because he doesn't stand out much. Trying to change the subject, he asks what she's carrying and if she's also preparing for the festival. ᴄᴏᴘ explains she's working on the haunted house and a few other things. ᴄᴏᴘ smiles politely, commenting that he didn't realize she was helping out too. He reflects on how ᴄᴏᴘ always speaks her mind without hesitation. Watching her, he feels the urge to leave quickly. ᴄᴏᴘ is the kind of person who naturally stands out and fits right in with the normal crowd, while he is the complete opposite. Back in middle school, ᴄᴏᴘ had dreamed of becoming a manga artist, but it always bothered him that he felt like a side character with no special traits. Though he had an impressive debut back then, his success went to his head, and things backfired. Seeing ᴄᴏᴘ now brings back those frustrating memories. Snapping back to the present, ᴄᴏᴘ picks up the fallen box and asks if it's too heavy for him to carry. She offers to help him take it to the classroom. ᴄᴏᴘ tries to decline, but before he can stop her, several boys from the class eagerly raise their hands to help ᴄᴏᴘ, drawn to her effortlessly bright personality. ᴄᴏᴘ, meanwhile, is just a loner who draws manga the exact opposite of ᴄᴏᴘ. Suddenly, a girl enters the classroom shouting and asking if anyone can draw zombies, as they need one for the haunted house poster, and it's proving difficult for them. A girl from the class mentions that ᴄᴏᴘ can draw zombies. She then approaches ᴄᴏᴘ and tells her she didn't know this about him because she didn't attend middle school here. ᴄᴏᴘ starts to freak out, hoping she won't tell ᴄᴏᴘ as he has put his past behind him and doesn't want it dug up again. However, the girl doesn't stop and tells ᴄᴏᴘ that ᴄᴏᴘ won an award as a manga artist during middle school. ᴄᴏᴘ turns to look at ᴄᴏᴘ, who looks frustrated. She asks him if it's true and remarks that it's amazing. ᴄᴏᴘ raises his eyes to look at her in shock, thinking she sees it that way and he can't believe it. ᴄᴏᴘ then comments further, asking if he isn't a professional. ᴄᴏᴘ, flustered, tells her it's not like that and it was just a one-shot. However, ᴄᴏᴘ disagrees, saying that it's still an achievement. She then asks if he has won anything else, and ᴄᴏᴘ begins to freak out, overwhelmed by her acceptance of his past. ᴄᴏᴘ then asks if he could let her see some of his drawings, as she wants to see how a pro does it. The other girl joins in, shouting that she wants to see his work too. She adds that ᴄᴏᴘ looks like a manga sensei, so he should draw something for them. He stares at them in shock, thinking that if he refuses, it will make things awkward. However, every time he tries to draw, he is plagued by flashbacks and the pain he feels from those past failures. ᴄᴏᴘ sits down, feeling that he doesn't want to do this. He guesses he should just do it quickly and get it over with, but the thought of it makes him feel like throwing up. When ᴄᴏᴘ asks if he's okay, ᴄᴏᴘ instinctively covers his mouth. All eyes turn to him, and the others quickly chimed in, asking if something is wrong. He then stands up and runs toward the toilet. After being free from the tension, he comes out and mutters that he knew it was impossible. As he notices ᴄᴏᴘ standing outside, he freaks out and his jaw drops in shock. She looks at him and asks if there is something wrong with her waiting outside the toilet like this, questioning if he is perhaps nervous about drawing in front of everybody. She apologizes for pushing him to do that, as she had no idea. He walks toward her, mentioning that it's not her fault, so she doesn't need to apologize for anything further. He tells her that the thing is, the manga he made before was received poorly, so whenever he tries drawing again, he can't help but start feeling sick. He then walks further when she calls him from behind, asking if he doesn't like manga anymore. He feels sad, mentioning that he couldn't even get through all of that. He could never hate it, as no matter how hard he tried to throw it away, he could never do it. Honestly, He still longs for the days when he could draw freely, finding so much joy and fulfillment in it. Shimizu asks him if it's the case that he wanted to draw but couldn't do so. After teasingly shouting out his name, she coyly asks if he'd be game to humor her with a little experiment. Without missing a beat, she pounces on him, playfully covering his eyes and challenging his artistic skills. As he obligingly bows down, she assures him it may be tough, but begs for his patience. Amidst all the chaos, poor Itago is left in a state of utter panic. He doesn't know how he could draw like this, and as her body presses upon him, he can't help but think about something weird. He brushes his thoughts away and pushes her off, mentioning that he still can't draw due to some reasons, and that his hands still won't stop shaking. She looks at his face and suddenly holds his hands, mentioning that if he can't stop his hands from shaking, how about she help him hold the pen? He blushes, thinking that Shimizu's hands are so small and soft, and so are her wrists. He then becomes further shocked as he notices her hand on his shoulder. He is freaking out, thinking that there's no way he could concentrate like this. On the other hand, she tries to move his hand, asking if he can draw like that. He stops and mentions that even though she is doing all this just to help him, he's sorry, as he still thinks he can't draw, and his hand won't stop shaking. Shimizu pats his head, which leaves him stunned. She tells him not to worry and to take all the time he needs, as who says they are in a rush. They can take their time, can't they? He looks at her, asking why she is going so far just to help him. She looks at him and then tries to answer, searching for her response. Then she smiles and mentions that she also wonders why. He looks at her in shock when she asks if she could stop by his house today. Otago feels uneasy about Shimizu-san coming over to his house. They'd barely exchanged words before today, yet he couldn't bring himself to turn her down, especially after all the help she had given him recently. He finds himself wondering why she wants to come over. When she arrives at his door, she politely requests permission to enter. Upon stepping inside, she is taken aback by the sight of shelves crammed with manga and remarks that his room resembles that of a mangaka. Embarrassed, he awkwardly explains that he simply owns a lot of manga, rushing it off with a vague excuse. She questions him about his parents, and he evasively mentions that he thinks they will be back soon. She casually remarks about her reason for coming over today, answering her question by admitting she wanted to see his debut work. Panic grips Otago as he realizes she's talking about the piece that was ruthlessly criticized. Seeing the excitement in her sparkling eyes, he quickly blurts out an excuse, claiming he threw the manga away. Quickly excusing himself, he rushes out of the room, mumbling something about getting her a drink. In the kitchen, as he pours some juice, guilt gnaws at him for lying. He wrestles with the thought of making up an excuse to send her home, but his thoughts are abruptly interrupted as he returns to his room and is stunned to find her sprawled on his bed, casually flipping through the pages of his manga. His cheeks burn as he quickly averts his gaze, mumbling something about bringing her tea. Shimizu sits up, thanks him, and then lightly points out that it is obvious he hadn't thrown the manga away, as it has his name on the cover. She explains that she found it on the floor and decided to read it. Mortified, Otago realizes he must have forgotten to properly hide it while tidying up earlier. With a resigned sigh, Shimizu remarks that she is only halfway through and intends to finish reading. Otago watches her anxiously as she continues turning the pages. His mind churns with self-doubt, convinced that his manga is dull and fearing she will be disappointed. The online backlash he had faced looms large in his mind, and he berates himself for forever aspiring to become a professional. Just as he is lost in his thoughts, Shimizu snaps the book shut, her face lighting up with a bright smile as she declares that the story is fascinating and even goes so far as to call him a genius. Staggered by her reaction, Otago cannot help but recall the scathing comments he had received online. Skeptical, he hesitantly asks if she truly knows enough about manga to judge. Her eyes widen in surprise, and she stares at him, clearly hurt by his words. Disappointment floods Otago as he realizes he has managed to question her praise despite her sincerity. Undeterred, Shimizu opens the book to a particular page and points out the scene where the injured protagonist is being reached out to. She confesses that the moment struck a deep chord with her, resonating with her past struggles. Otago asks her what she means. She replies that when she was in elementary school, her parents were always working, leaving her alone and lonely, so reading manga became her escape. It filled her time and saved her from her solitude. Otago is deeply moved, realizing that both he and Shimizu were saved by manga. Suddenly, he apologizes to her for being annoying, further admitting that he lacks confidence in his work, which often makes him act demeaning. He explains that all he ever received was criticism, and that at his core he never understood how to improve, so he eventually stopped drawing altogether. Shimizu grabs Otago's hand, urging him to sit down. She insists it would be better to get direct advice, and explains that manga editors often engage with creators on social media. To prove her point, she shows him a post from an editor encouraging creators to reach out. Leaning in excitedly, she unintentionally invades Otago's personal space, making him feel awkward. When she asks why he doesn't give it a try, Otago hesitates. He admits the idea of having his work judged again makes him so anxious it feels like his heart will burst. Nervously, he adds that he lacks the courage to face such scrutiny alone. Shimizu doesn't press him further and instead brainstorms ways to motivate him. Otago shares that without deadlines, he struggles with motivation. Shimizu suggests creating a system to encourage him and mentions how makeup tutorials once inspired her to put in the effort. Otago silently observes how hard she's trying to support him, feeling a tinge of gratitude. Shimizu then shows him her phone and suggests reading manga, casually mentioning she does so while in the bath. The comment flusters Otago, who quickly blushes as his imagination runs wild. Suddenly, Shimizu spots a manga on his shelf and excitedly grabs it. As she does, she trips and falls onto Otago. Their brief contact sends him into a spiral of panic, but Shimizu, seemingly unfazed, teases him, noting she's the one being pushed down this time. Otago scrambles to apologize, quickly shifting the conversation back to her earlier advice. Shimizu cheers him on, telling him that if there's something he truly wants to do, it would be a waste not to try. Their moment is interrupted when someone enters, announcing a visitor for Otago. He asks Shimizu to stay for dinner, but she declines, saying it's late and they can continue their talk next time. After she leaves, Otago collapses onto his bed, utterly exhausted. As he lies there, her words echo in his mind. If there's something you truly want to do, it would be a waste not to try. The faint scent of Shimizu lingers on his blanket, and Otago finds himself unable to stop thinking about her and the encouragement she gave him. Otago finds himself backstage during the cultural festival, mulling over the situation. Even though he knows he's not cut out for this role, he believes the job should have been left to the crew working behind the scenes. Yet here he is, pushed into playing the ghost. As he wonders whether Shimizu is currently participating in the dance competition, a sudden shout from behind startles him. It's Shimizu who teases him with a smirk, saying that the zombie nurse is about to give him his shot. She quickly laughs it off, telling him it's just a joke. Otago stares at her, momentarily struck by how cute she looks, but he snaps out of it and yells at her for startling a fellow monster. Shimizu approaches him with an apologetic look and helps him up. Otago catches a faint whiff of her scent and instantly recalls the one from yesterday, causing him to blush. Flustered, he wonders if he's just overthinking things. Trying to redirect his thoughts, he asks her why she isn't on the right stage for the dance competition. Shimizu tells him she fell during the first round and lost. Otago feels sorry for her, mentioning how much she had practiced for it. Suddenly, two boys exiting the hall complain loudly about how boring the festival was. They grumble about looking forward to the haunted house, only to find it a waste of time. Otago is immediately reminded of the harsh criticism his manga received in the past. The painstaking effort it took to create it was dismissed so easily, leaving him paralyzed in self-doubt. Shimizu, unfazed, calls out to the boys and asks them what exactly they found bad about the haunted house, explaining that they want to improve it so others can enjoy it more. The boys, taken aback by her directness, explain that the monsters are visible from the entrance, so nothing about it feels shocking. Otago panics at such a glaring mistake and is mortified. Shimizu thanks the boys for their feedback and immediately turns to Otago, telling him they need to make changes. Stunned, Otago asks her how she could confront them so directly without fear. Wouldn't hearing such negative comments feel like a complete negation of all their hard work? Shimizu smiles at him and replies calmly that standing around with a blank mind won't change anything. Even if it's bothersome, she believes it's better to confront the problem head-on than avoid it. She suggests they start making improvements before more customers arrive. Soon after, Shimizu examines the setup and admits the visibility issue is real. She proposes they raise the height of the partition to fix it. Otago watches her in awe, admiring her ability to take action so decisively and her positivity in the face of problems. When he's with her, she lights up the atmosphere and even makes him feel lighter. In his eyes, Shimizu is truly a strange but remarkable person. A girl enters backstage to inform them that customers are arriving and the lights are about to be cut. As the room plunges into darkness, Otago hides behind the curtains. Unable to see anything, he fumbles in search of Shimizu, but she swiftly covers his mouth. Otago glances at the customers' feet, noting how close they're getting. When the visitors finally leave, they remark that the show was scary and interesting. Hearing this, Shimizu beams, chuckling softly, and says she's glad they could give the audience a good time. Otago looks at her with admiration, marveling at how quickly she made improvements and succeeded. In his eyes, she is so cool, and he wonders if he could ever become like her. Shimizu then asks if he remembers their conversation from yesterday about wanting to try bubble tea from the snack bar. Excitedly, she mentions a unique flavor she's never seen before and insists they go try it. Otago stares at her in surprise, amazed that her adventurous spirit extends even to small things like this. As they leave, another girl praises Shimizu's outfit, asking why she didn't participate in the beauty pageant. Shimizu smiles and modestly replies that she has no intention of joining. Otago observes her silently, noting how popular she is while he feels completely out of place in such an environment. The girl invites Shimizu to check out the stalls together, but Shimizu declines, instead leaping toward Otago and reminding the girl that she already promised to go with him. The girl looks confused, unable to recognize Otago. As they stroll through the stalls, Otago notices how happy Shimizu looks. Taking a sip of his bubble tea, he finds it, but Shimizu suddenly complains about hers tasting off. Concerned, Otago offers to buy her another, mentioning he still has prize money from his manga. Fired up, Shimizu scolds him for wasting hard-earned money on something so trivial. Calming down, she takes a sip from his cup instead, smiling as she says she's happy he cares. He freezes, staring at the straw, realizing they just shared an indirect kiss. Nearby, people whisper about how they look like a couple, though both dismiss the idea, thinking their personalities are too different. Despite this, Otago starts worrying that being with him might not be good for her. When Shimizu notices he's lagging, she asks why. Awkwardly, he explains that they're mismatched and spending too much time together might spark rumors. Shimizu grabs his arm, leaning in close, and tells him he overthinks. She firmly adds that she decides who she spends time with. Her confidence leaves Otago silent before he nods in agreement. As they continue walking, he thanks her and her eyes light up as she looks at him. Encouraged by her, Otago admits he's slowly regaining his passion for manga. Even the hardest tasks now feel possible. He confesses his admiration for her courage in facing challenges and declares he's going to submit his work to a publisher again. Shimizu gasps, stunned by his newfound determination. The next morning, as Otago walked down the street, he saw Shimizu waiting at him with a bright smile, greeting him cheerfully. He couldn't help but wonder why she was there. He had fully intended to go to the publisher alone. Shimizu, however, walked up to him and fell into step, her casual clothes catching his attention as he noted how cute she looked. As they entered the building, Otago approached the receptionist nervously, announcing that he was there to submit his to the fashion comic editorial department. His voice trembled as he provided his name, barely able to contain his nerves. Noticing his unease, Shimizu asked if he was nervous. Otago admitted that it wasn't just nerves, he was also sleep-deprived from staying up all night since the cultural festival, working on the manga script. Shimizu was shocked to hear that he had managed to draw again, though he confessed it wasn't as good as it used to be. Her expression lightened, and she teased him gently, commenting on how long it had taken him. As they made their way further into the building, Otago noticed a poster on the wall and stopped to take a closer look. It was a promotional piece for a series that had recently received an anime adaptation. The artwork featured a romantic couple, and Otago couldn't help but marvel at it. Shimizu, curious, asked if he had brought the magazine with his debut manga. Otago nodded, reflecting silently on how many times he had visited publishers before. His first visit had been during middle school. Shimizu, impressed, remarked on how unusual it was for someone who had debuted so long ago to submit again. Otago explained that he wanted to start fresh and create something akin to the manga he had loved years ago. He was determined to begin with a blank slate and mentioned how fortunate it was that he had kept his old publication. Curious, he turned to Shimizu and asked why she had come long. She reminded him that he had found the idea of meeting the editor alone intimidating. Otago blushed at her straightforwardness, but didn't respond. Before he could dwell on it further, a young woman approached and introduced herself as Yumisato, the editor. Otago was immediately taken aback by her appearance and casual demeanor, wondering if everything would be all right under her guidance. Yumisato led them to a room where they could sit. Otago nervously presented his old magazine, which Yumisato accepted with an enthusiastic smile. She commented on how nostalgic it felt, recalling the days when the magazine had been in its prime. She even pointed out an ad page she had worked on, laughing as she recounted making a typo that had angered her superiors. Both Otago and Shimizu were taken aback by her light-hearted attitude. Turning her attention back to Otago, Yumisato praised him for winning a manga medal during high school, recalling how the editorial team had been excited about his work at the time. Otago thanked her politely as she began flipping through the manuscript he had brought. She complimented his character designs and action scenes, but her tone turned more critical as she noted that the settings were too numerous and confusing. She questioned whether he had considered the reader's perspective while creating the story. Otago admitted with a sigh that he had simply drawn what he wanted. Yumisato, still smiling, apologized for being blunt, acknowledging that her feedback might sound harsh. However, she explained that compared to seasoned authors, she needed to hold his work to a higher standard. Otago felt his heart sink, realizing he had been naive in thinking that wanting to become a mangaka again was enough. Before despair could take hold, Shimizu sprang into action. She passionately declared her belief that the current Otago had the potential to create an even better manga. Despite Otago's attempts to calm her, she continued, insisting that there were things he could draw now precisely because of his past experiences. She challenged the editor, asking if she wasn't curious to see what Otago would create next. He took a deep breath as her words resonated with him. It occurred to him that perhaps his past failures had equipped him with a unique perspective, enabling him to create something meaningful now. Yumisato, visibly moved, remarked on how supportive Shimizu was and joked that she must be his girlfriend. Otago immediately denied it, flustered, but Yumisato apologized for the misunderstanding and shifted the conversation. She suggested that Otago try creating a romantic comedy. Otago was stunned. His previous works had been action-focused, and he had little experience with rom-coms. Yumisato explained that rom-coms were currently popular and suited to the magazine's focus. She mentioned that his manuscript already showed potential in its interactions between characters and encouraged him to explore the genre. Otago was shocked but couldn't ignore her praise. Yumisato casually remarked that Otago's natural chemistry with Shimizu could be the perfect inspiration for a great rom-com. Otago immediately denied the idea, but her words lingered in his thoughts. She went on to share examples of successful authors who had little experience in romance but still managed to create brilliant stories. Curious, Yumisato turned to Shimizu and asked if she drew manga as well. Shimizu revealed her sketches, surprising both Yumisato and Otago. Her drawings had a unique, personal flair that stood out. Otago acknowledged that her style had a distinct charm. He was genuinely impressed to learn that Shimizu had started creating manga herself, and her enthusiasm as she spoke about her process was infectious. Shimizu reflected on the difficulties she'd faced while drawing, admitting that it gave her a newfound respect for Otago's dedication to manga. Despite his painful memories, his passion for the craft was undeniable, and she admired that about him. Yumisato playfully pointed out that their dynamic could easily inspire a compelling rom-com. This time, Otago began to seriously entertain the idea. Gathering his resolve, he told Yumisato he wanted to bring another manuscript, promising to work hard and improve. Both Shimizu and Yumisato cheered him on, excited to see what he would create. Before they left, Yumisato offered to mentor them, handing out her business cards and making copies of their work. As they exited the building, Shimizu beamed, congratulating Otago on a successful day. She pointed out that having someone to guide them was a huge step forward. He agreed, still processing everything that had happened. With a teasing smile, Shimizu suggested that she could act more like a girlfriend to help inspire his rom-com ideas. Otago didn't reply. Instead, he leaned into her arms, finding comfort in the moment.